Hello class. So in this video, I will start the siding for sure. And what we could do is we could just start making a bunch of layers and drawing things right in Photoshop if we wanted to. But one of the great things about Photoshop is you can take images from other places and manipulate them as you need to put them in the image, which is usually, not always, but usually the easier way to do things. And that's what we're going to do with the siding. So I'm going to show you where a great place to find images are. If you open up a web browser and go to Google, if you don't know this, you probably do, but if you don't know, up in the right-hand corner, there's an images button. You click on it and you can see now there's images here. And anything I type here will now be an image rather than text, which is great. So I'm going to type in siding, okay? And if you see this, you're going to get all these sidings, and lots of these aren't very good for us because this is a picture of a house, and all I want is siding, and I want it to be flat on. So if you're really looking for a texture or a pattern like we're doing in this image, it's really great to type in something like siding seamless texture. And what you're going to see is images like this. This is what we want. Okay, we still want to be careful here. We have to sort of know what you want, what's going to work for you and what's not. I'm going to tell you orientation of siding, the color of the siding, and even the scale of the siding do not matter. We can easily change any of that in Photoshop. What is going to matter is making sure it says something like seamless in the search pattern. So for example, if we take this one and it doesn't say seamless, you can almost see that it's not going to work. And by seamless, it means this edge and this edge have to match, and that edge have to match. But I can see it's crooked, so that's not going to happen. So you just want to make sure you find something that says seamless here. I don't know. I'm picking on something generic. I think I'll go with this one, fairly generic, because I can make edits in Photoshop, and I want to show you that. Actually, I like this one. I'm just looking for the joints and let's see if there's a little bit of texture in there, but I purposely chosen something without color because I can show you how to edit that later. It looks like I think this one's going to be good. So let me right click over top of it and go to save image. And actually JTIF is not going to work. So let me cancel that. Let me go. I don't like that one. Let me try this one. Save image. So that's just a note. The JTIF doesn't really work well. Like something like a JPEG or a PNG is going to work much better. And by that I mean there's a name which doesn't matter, but the .jpeg. So we're going to go with this, and I'll save it here. And I'll open that. I'll go back to Photoshop, and I'm just going to open that file I just downloaded, which is this one right here. Okay, so I'm going to do my siding, and most of my siding I want to be vertical. So the first thing I'm going to do is rotate this image. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Rotate. Sorry, not Adjustments, Image Rotation. Rotate. There we go. And now I've got vertical siding. Now I could take some time now and change the color. I can do the color later. It doesn't matter. I'm going to actually do it later because I'm going to use multiple colors so I can do it in the file as I see them together. But I could do it now if I wanted to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Select All. And I'm going to go to Edit, Define Pattern. And I'm just going to say, okay, you can set the name if you want to, but I'm just going to say, okay. And it's made it this pattern that we see we're going to use in a minute here. So if I go back to my house and I'm going to make a new layer by hitting the new layer button here, yours might look like a little plus sign or something if you have a newer version. I'm going to change the layer name to siding 1 because I'm going to use a couple different sidings here. And what I'm going to do is, see, I've got a selection set actually from my last video. I still have it selected. So first I'm going to do select, deselect. And what I'm going to do is make a new selection so that we can be purposely bigger than the house. Really, the siding is just going to be here and here, so it just needs to be bigger than this area. You're going to see why I need that here in a second. But I'm going to go Edit, Fill, and I'm going to change the contents to Pattern. And I'm going to do the custom pattern. I'm going to go to your last one, which is the one you just made, and you're going to say OK. And you can see it's put the pattern right over the whole thing. Now, I've got a couple problems with this still right now, which is one is it's not in perspective. That's the biggest one. And two, the scale might not be as big as I want. The scale's not too bad. I want it to be a little bigger. And you might be able to fix that with the perspective, or you just might scale it. So I'll do the scale first just to show you. It's the same thing. I'll just go Transform Scale, and I'll pull from the corner, and I'll pull up. You can see it's just making it wider. And I'm looking at this area here will be my biggest siding. And so I sort of want to make it for that, and then that's something that looks good and which actually could be significantly bigger as I look at it, because the planks can be fairly large in that section. So something like that, and I'll double click it to make it sort of large like this. All right, now I need to get the perspective right, because if this is the right size panel for here, it's too big on this side because there's a perspective moving down across my screen. But I can come in here and I can go to transform and I can go to perspective. There are other perspectives too, but for this simple sort of one directional perspective, you can see as I squeeze down here, these planks get smaller while these sort of stay the same size. Really, the ones that are staying the same size as out here. And what I should have done is this. Let me escape out of this temporarily, because this is what I should have done. I should have first deselected, come to my rectangle marquee, and actually deleted. It doesn't have to be perfect at this stage because we're going to get it later, but delete anything that is beyond this line, because the siding is all contained over here. And I'm going to do Control D to deselect, and then just select again across this pattern here, because watch, I'm going to go to edit, transform perspective now. It's going to maintain this siding size a little bit better for me as I do that now. So you can see now it's staying the same size I want and making this much skinnier on this side. And you can really set this to be whatever you want. If you want to sort of be perfect about it, you really can sort of start to say the vanishing points should vanish somewhere matching this house, but no one's going to sort of match that up. And you can see just by looking at it, I'm already pretty close to it. So I'm going to, estimate something like that. I'm going to hit return, or double click on your mouse, and I'll do select, deselect. And you can see the siding now, although it's extending outside the house, is really in perspective to the house itself. So the last step well, we're going to change the color here. I don't want to forget that. But the next step, I should say, is to get rid of the siding where we don't need it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this in a couple steps. There's different ways. There's lots of ways of selecting tools in Photoshop, but I'm going to press Control on my keyboard and click the icon next to building to select the building itself. And I'm going to go select inverse. So right there. So what it's done now is I've selected things that aren't matching the building. When I hit delete, you can see the siding just matches the building. Now, I don't care that it's over the windows and the chimney and all that stuff. We will fix that by using layers in future videos. What I do care about, though, is it's not bigger than the building itself. There is one spot where that is the case. So I'm going to press Control D to deselect, and that's at this shadow down here. So I'm going to zoom in by pressing Alt and scroll wheel. I'm just going to use my rectangle marquee and select from anywhere to the top left to just matching the side of my building and hitting delete. And so now the shadow comes back up much more normally there. And I zoom out, and there's my shadow in perspective. No, it's not shadow, my siding in perspective. I think it's been a long day. Now, the last thing I want to do with the siding is change the color. You are free to set the colors to whatever color you would like. It all works the same way. I like to do it from images. There's other ways of doing this, but I like to go to image adjustments and then going to hue saturation. And you can see that I can change the color or the hue by using this control. And so I'm going to set it in the blue zone. That's what I'm going to go with. Something like this. I can make it more bright or more gray with this, the saturation, of course, or more light or more dark with this. And you can pull these three things together to get the color that you want. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to think about the color that I want of mine. I think I'm going to do somewhere around a blue like this. A little more saturated perhaps, but not much. There we go. I think something like that is the color of my main color of my house that I'll go with. And I'll say, okay, you can use anything. If you have a pure white siding, you might have to hit the colorize button. That's just for your information if that's not working for you. But usually you don't need to. And then I'll just say okay, and I've got the siding done. And the last thing I should do in this video, because we don't want to forget, if you haven't saved this, always save your work frequently enough. You don't want to lose it as you're going. So just do File, Save As, and save it somewhere. And then we'll move on to the next part of the project.